Today's topic is pretty much attitude and how attitude changes or alters perspective in the work environment versus personal life. So pretty much we're going to express and go into detail about how attitudes can affect the overall person on a daily basis, whether it's a good attitude or a bad attitude.
There, perfect. I couldn't have said it any better. So Sergeant Fears, he's clear on the East Coast, or that way, and I'm on the West Coast. So we're 3 hours apart right now. And but what's been going on, Sergeant Fears? Tell me where you at and what are you doing?
All right, so Sergeant Fears, I'm at a Joint Base Andrews in Maryland. I'm on the PS section, which is Protective Services. So pretty much any distinguished visitors that come through, such as the president all the way down to generals, we just escort them to their plane, escort them off base, and pretty much work with their personal security teams, whether it's Secret Service or whatnot, and just make sure they get a safe exit and departure or arrival, depending on how they come in on that certain day.
Wow, pretty important stuff, huh?
Yeah, sometimes they take that very serious. So just doing something such as that really makes you realize, like, hey, wow, like what I'm doing actually plays a factor in allowing somebody of such caliber to have a safe flight coming back or leaving. So I mean, once I realized that kind of hit me like this is actually pretty unique and cool.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like a lot goes into just something so simple, right?
Yep.
That's crazy, man. Well, hey, thank you for being a part of that. We couldn't do it without you, bud. Attitudes. So when you're dealing with a situation, how do you keep a good attitude, or how do you keep a neutral attitude in that situation, man?
So, I mean, pretty much you gotta look at the big picture with attitudes and stuff. You can't let the most minor convenience deter how the rest of your outcome will be with whatever you're doing, whether it's doing my job, whether it's depending on somebody else to do their job. You can't let the smallest factor deter you from the straight path you're on, such as just getting the job done no matter what it is in all aspects. That's how I look at it too. So pretty much I just don't let somebody else or something that I can't control determine how my attitude is presented to others, because we can't control everything in life. We can't control weather. We can't control if somebody's delayed. We can't control somebody new not knowing properly what to do. We can't control things like that. The only thing we can do is teach. And if we teach with a bad attitude, then all we're going to do is give off our energy to somebody else, and that's just not a good thing.
Yeah, man, there's times where it's so easy to just be like, man, I hate this situation. Like, I just want to chill, It's not really, sometimes that's not in the cards, you're not always going to be able to, let things slide. You gotta have a good attitude. And then afterward, you can obviously like let it go and be like, whatever, man.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just don't have that option.
I agree.
Yeah. So like, kind of like the first question I asked, but the next question is, when have you ever had a bad attitude in your career, and how did you deal with it?
So I can give two examples actually.
Yeah, tell us a story.
So one example of me having a bad attitude is, I'm pretty sure a lot of people can relate to it, is when I found out I got orders from Why Not.
Oh yes.
Oh no. So and I was in tech school, and I saw I had orders to Minot, which those weren't our first orders. So I went through tech school when the government had its shutdown, and I originally had Moody Air Force Base, and I was so excited because I was like, I'm close to home. I'm close to Jacksonville, Florida. And then the government shut down. We all lost our orders, and then we got orders again. And then a lot of us had global strike, to include myself with Minot. And at that time, I was like, what is Minot? Where is this? I I had to Google it on my phone. It's like, what is Minot? It said North Dakota. And I was like, where's North Dakota at? And I was shocked to see I was going so far away. And then, we were like, okay, well, we can just trade bases. I actually had somebody I wanted to trade for Minot to do from Bismarck, and he ended up having moved. And, there was no trades at the time because of the government shutdown, so we couldn't trade orders. So everybody was kind of upset. But what made my attitude even worse about figuring out I had Minot was listening to everybody tell me, like, Minot is a terrible place. Minot's not this. Minot's not that. And I just kept listening to everybody, so it just made me even more angry to come to Minot. And I told myself, like, why did I join the Air Force? I do not want to go. I do not want to go to the middle of nowhere next to Canada. And then, so I was very distraught. I was mad for weeks. And then one of my technical instructors came back. He's on leave. Came back, and he was like, "Who all has orders to Minot?" And we were talking, and we raised our hand. And he was the only person out of, like, I want to say 12 people, he was the only person that spoke actually highly of Minot. And I asked him, I was saying, hey, why is Minot such a good place for you? Have you ever been there? Because these instructors, I'm going to say this, I'm going to highlight this. Everybody else that said they hated Minot, never been to Minot.
Yep.
But the one guy that said Minot said nothing but positive things about Minot. The only negative thing he said was the snow. But he said everything else was great. And he was actually in Minot for 6 years.
Wow, man, that's a long time.
And yeah, he was in Minot for 6 years, and he was he did TRF, he did K-Trip, he did the good stuff. So he was giving us positive insight of what to do, how to expect stuff, and how to go forth. And he actually told me about convoys and TRF before I even got there. Mm-hmm. And that kind of gave me motivation. So once I got to Minot and I saw for myself, my attitude completely shifted. My first 2-3 weeks, I was still mad because I was here or I was there. But when I met my tech, which was Sergeant Dakota Hughes, he was a tech sergeant.
Yep.
And that guy, man, that guy is just he is like the most credible, positive person about any negative situation. If you're having a bad day, this is the guy that will come in the room and be like, "Fears, man, what you mad for?" I'm like, "I don't know, I just don't want to be here." Then I don't know, for some reason he'll just take you, have a conversation with you, then you'll just forget everything bad that just happened for the last 2-3 hours. He just that. So he was one of those people that always had a good attitude. At least around our troops and stuff, or around his troops, he had a good attitude, and he made all of us enjoy coming to work. Mm-hmm. So that was an example of my attitude changing from bad and getting around somebody with a good attitude, and just my whole aspect of Minot changed. And I'm actually happy I went to Minot, and I should have just went there with a positive outlook to start versus negative. And I'm glad Minot was my first base. I left there with a great attitude. Went there with the bad one, left with a great. It is a good idea to send airmen to global strike first.
Okay, I'm listening.
Just because, so we're on Panama 12s, right?
Yep.
But it's a split 12, so the morning shift comes in from, because we're on the PS side, so it's different. The morning shift comes in from 6 to 6 technically, and we come in. We work from 2 to 11, but we come in at 11 or whatever in the morning to work out. Just get what we need to get done if we have anything to get done. So it's really 2 to 11, and obviously if it's slow, they give out a lot of EFDs here. So if you got something to do, we don't need 8 people working. We'll just have 4 or 5, something like that. And we work. It's Panama 12 technically, but I feel like I work 14, 15 days a week. And just listen to some of the people complain about oh yeah, we're working too much. And I'm like, what? I'm like, man, I was like, a 12-day, my last job was a 12-hour day was a good day. I was like, that was a good day. We were hoping it was 12 hours. And I was like, we got lucky, and it was, show up at 6:30 in the morning and happening to be back on base by 5. That was a blessing. I was like, that was a blessing. And I was like, you guys just don't know. And I was like, you guys have no idea. it's crazy listening to like other people complain about a schedule, and I'm like, man, it could be way worse somewhere else.
Yeah, it really could be, man. You need to go through that adversity before you get the good life, So,
Yes,
yeah,
that's why.
it makes things better.
So,
That's good, man. Yeah, I appreciate that story, man. That's because a lot of people I had the same type of outlook, but I'm gonna pick a different point in my career where I had a bad attitude and the way I dealt with it. I was I had a line for staff, and I was super excited. I had just got married. Everything was looking up. I applied for K9 retrain, and I got accepted. And then I went to 7-level school down in San Antonio, and on my way back, I got a phone call telling me that it was my supervisor. He told me, "Hey, your retraining got canceled." And let me tell you, I've never been so upset in my life because I was banking everything on this retrain because there was going to be a reenlistment bonus. It could have potentially came with the PCS. I was not to say Nebraska was a bad place to be stationed at. It's actually really nice. I would recommend Offutt for anybody who has questions about it. But that when it got canceled, man, everything about me just like fell apart. So I was pretty upset about that. Fast forward to I want to say it was like May of 2013. So it was like 4 or 5 months fast forward. I was looking on AMS for another opportunity because I was really I was wanting a break from the career field, just everybody needs a break every now and then, So I found the courier position, which is 8 Papa 000, and there was a spot open at Offutt. So I was like, oh, cool, I'm already here. Like, I'd be saving the military money. Like, they don't have to PCS me, none of that. So I applied for it and didn't hear anything back for about a month, and I was freaking out like, geez, I hope they got my application, So I called the POC up, who was a chief, and I actually, looking back, that was kind of stupid because, a staff sergeant just calling a chief up is, it's kind of ballsy,
Yeah.
But so I did it anyway, and he was like, "Oh, I didn't get your application." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. That's probably why you haven't called me back." So he's like, "Yeah, just send it to me directly." And so I sent it to him directly, and then didn't hear anything back for like 2 months, and I was freaking out.
Ooh.
And I got a call in August, and it was from the station chief at the courier station at Offutt. And he was like, "Oh, is this Sergeant Beddard?" And I was like, "Yep." And he's like, "I see you on our gaining list." And I was like, oh, dude. So, my whole, the bad attitude from, losing my retrain to, just the waiting for something to happen that was positive in my life, I was like, oh, man, this is great. So, everything just kind of, it paid off, But, and then I also re-enlisted that same December. So, it was turning that negative situation into a positive one just by the small little actions to do that. Now, the advice is that I have for somebody going through a bad attitude is you're going to have bad times. You're going to have bad times. You're going to have good times. What you do in the bad times is going to determine how long you stay in that bad time. So you have to turn your bad situation as best you can into a positive and a good one. It's not easy because, when you're in a bad situation, there's a process, but I don't know. It all worked out, and that courier job was actually the highlight of my Air Force career, and I recommend that to anybody who's interested because it allowed me to, get to see my daughter grow up, and I just had a great time with it. But But yeah, so next question. So what can influence someone to have a bad attitude? Like, what are some things that would make you feel like, man, this sucks?
So there's a lot of things that can influence somebody to have a bad attitude. Some examples are it could be work. Once again, it could be things that are out of your control. I'll give another example of that is being on convoys at Minot. There'd be some days where we'd go out there expecting an easy day, but maybe something breaks, within the mission. Something on the missile site might break, and maintenance needs extra time, and you might have been expecting to be back by 5 o'clock, but now you're not going to be back until 8:30. And just personally seeing that affected a lot of people's attitude, to include myself when I first started, because pretty much I was just expecting early days, but that's not always the case. Other factors could be things such as somebody coming in with a bad attitude and just rubbing it off on folks.
Mm-hmm.
There are, let's say, there's weather. Weather is almost the number one factor. A lot of people get upset when they have to come to work and it's 30 degrees outside or -0.
Yeah, dude.
That's a big one. I know
You said -0.
Yeah, -0. That exactly doesn't even make sense. -0. That's how cold Minot was. I don't even. Once they say -40, I just call it -0 because it's either way I can't breathe one way or another.
Yeah.
And that would just make me upset coming to work.
Yeah, for sure, dude.
And those are just some factors that I personally experience. I can't get over that, especially the -0s.
Yeah. Like, what about like personal things, man? Like that might have an influence. Would you say that?
So, personal things, yeah, there's a lot of personal things that have attitudes. I've seen it firsthand. Spouse situations, kid situations, financial situations, personal stuff such as your car having a flat tire that can affect you personally because you didn't plan for that. Maybe, some folks don't have the $200 to go replace their tire right at that moment because maybe they paid other bills and stuff. Yeah. And that could personally affect how you perceive things and your attitude going forward in life. So there's a lot of personal factors. It could be even family, siblings fighting. For me, it could be stuff as playing Xbox and having a bad 2K day and arguing with my friends, and I might come to work mad over a video game. There's so many different personal factors that affect people, and that's just one example for me. I don't let it affect me anymore, but that's just one thing that used to affect me.
All right, I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll talk about it. So, the last question I have, and this goes for all the new supervisors, and especially you. You're not too seasoned of a supervisor yourself, but you're getting it. You're natural. But as a supervisor, how can you influence someone who has a bad attitude and give them the insight to have a better attitude?
That's a good one. So for me personally, I have 2 troops right now that are in situations where I would personally say they deserve to have bad attitudes. But at the same time, they deserve to have a bad attitude because of what they're going through, but it's not the right answer. So when I see things like that, and I don't mean they deserve to have bad attitude saying, hey, coming with a bad attitude every day. I don't mean that at all. Just the predicament they're in. It's just not a good predicament. So there's a lot of personal life stuff that's going on with one of my troops and Air Force stuff. And, I'm just so proud of him because his attitude is phenomenal. He comes to work. He doesn't let everything affecting him, ruin his days at work. And when I see him come with a good attitude, and even on the days where, I can see his attitude's not all the way there, what I do is I talk to him and I tell him, hey, this isn't the end of the world. No matter what happens, always have a plan. You have situation. You have people around you that support you. Look at the big picture. There's people that have it worse than you elsewhere. There's people that are in far worse situations than you. So I understand. I understand your frustration. I understand why you're mad. So let me rephrase that about saying when I said deserving to have a bad attitude. Nobody really deserves to have a bad attitude, but you have to understand their perspective, and you have to understand why they are frustrated, and you have to go from there. So once you understand why somebody's frustrated and why they might be having a bad day, that can give you the tools you need and sort of give you the guidance to properly go about helping that person see why, why they are in the predicament they're in. And I like to do that a lot. So I like to understand both parties, both sides, the full story before I just say, yeah, man, go be mad at the world, or, hey, no, everything's going to be all right. Because at the end of the day, a lot of situations, a lot of things aren't going to be all right. But what you can do to ensure that somebody's having a better day is when things aren't going to be all right, you're there with them. So now things aren't going to be all right for both of you guys because you guys are in it together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. Because, like, that's empathy, right? And that's a part of the NCO charge is, you need to approach things with empathy rather than apathy. Because if we're all in this together, you know what I mean? Like, the military is not a individual effort, it's a team effort. So if your troop, if you see them having a tough time, you jump in with them, and now you're both in it together, working through it, because no problem is too small or too big to get things to get it kind of resolved. I like what you said about like asking the questions, determining like what is actually the problem, like why are you upset, what's actually going on, like getting all the facts and understanding where their frustration and bad attitudes coming from. That way you can use that as like a tool to figure out how to get through it. And you said sometimes it's not going to be all right. And I use the example of a death in the family. Like, you could show up to work because a loved one passed away, or even a pet or something. It's not easy, and you're always going to have that, like, that nagging of, I miss this person because they passed away, and we had a lot of good times, but you can be there for that person to talk with them or just to listen. So that's what I use. I use like just listening, man. Like, listening is so powerful. You can work through a lot of things just by listening to somebody, because sometimes that's all somebody needs is they just want to let it out, man. And it's okay to be upset, but now once it starts affecting your work performance or your personal performance, it's like you're not taking care of yourself, or the job's you're starting to let things go at work. Now it's like, okay, cool, we got to step in and figure out what, like, you're not going to go get the help you need. Like, now we have to step in and intervene. But having a bad attitude can affect a lot of people around you, and yourself included. Like, but you gotta help people through it, man. Because a lot of these young cats, like, I'm 33, but man, I'm still going through some things too. Like, where I'll have a bad attitude because nobody's exempt from that. But it's a lot of the younger guys are they don't know how to cope through those things because they're just trying to figure life out. They just started.
Step at a time.
You got any parting words, man?
Yeah, one thing I'll touch up off of what you said, because I really like what you said about, just listening to people and whatnot, and being there for everyone. So once again, like we both emphasized, everything, there's just some days where everything won't be all right, and that's okay. So for anybody out there, there's nothing wrong with just letting your troop or somebody else vent, yell, get mad, cuss. There's nothing wrong with that. If you have to go one-on-one with somebody and let them just let their anger out because of something they're going through, then you have to do that. You can't just walk away from somebody and be like, well, he's mad or she's mad, so I'm just going to let her blow off steam. Like, there's many ways to let people blow off steam, and sometimes that's the best thing you could do for people, because people have everybody has built up stuff, and once that bubble just pops, I mean, who knows? So it's good to let people just come vent to you, and when they vent to you, let them vent without judgment. That's the number one thing. That's all I have to say. Just let people vent without judgment. So that'll take you a long way.
Definitely. Man. So I'll wrap this up. Sergeant Fierce, thanks for coming on. Another great talk. If there's anything that you want us to talk about, or if you'd like to come on the Whole Airman Development Group as a interviewee, just message us. Go ahead and comment if there's anything you saw from today's video that you would like to talk about further. We appreciate you guys watching, and until next time, we will see you then.
You grabbed me, Sergeant Beddard.